first storm of winter is a comin'. You pull the snow thrower out, you start her up, and she does this kind of garbage, and then she dies. What are the chances that we can get her running like this before the snow comes? Stand by. So I've got this old snow thrower that was given to me, I want to say 3 winters ago, and it has sat in a shed for 2 winters and done nothing. I haven't touched it. I decided maybe this winter, since we've already gotten 8 inches of snow and now there's a big storm a-coming, I should probably figure out how to get this thing going. So, she's got problems. Let's rebuild the carburetor. Step number 1. We're going to put our safety glasses on, pull the ignition pin out. We got 10 fingers coming in, we want 10 fingers coming out. There's 3 screws on the bottom of this housing. We'll pull those off, we can actually get access to the engine. Make sure you pull the choke handle extension off. Makes things a lot easier. Pull the fuel line off the bottom of the carburetor. This has got bad fuel in it, we know it. It's got a little bit of good fuel in it, but there's sediment at the bottom of the tank. We're going to go ahead and kind of swish it around while we're draining it. We're going to flush it with some clean fuel as well. Make sure that when you're done at the end of the season, you put some sort of fuel stabilizer in your gas, and that you run the fuel system dry. Better yet, if you can find gasoline that's actually all gasoline and no ethanol, that will help. Ethanol's no bueno. If you've got an electric start like I do, go ahead and pull that off of there. Pull the primer line off of the button. Go ahead and take the 2 bolts off the air intake housing. Pull the other end of that primer line off. Pay attention. This is the breather tube, which comes out of the valve cover and hooks into your air intake housing. We'll talk about that a little bit later. When we open up our air housing, we'll notice it's oily and gasoline-y on the inside. Shouldn't be like that. That's going to rear its ugly head here in a little bit. We're going to pull the bolt off the bottom of this gasoline cup. Gas is going to come out of it. The cup should come right off of there, but you know, sometimes you got to give it the old tappy tap. Oh look, goo, glorious goo. So your best friend in all of this is going to be carburetor cleaner and a brush. Try to get as much of that. It's not sediment. I don't even know what you really call it. A buildup. Get it off there. You can pull the pin, your float pin off, and your float and the needle will come out. There was a buildup on the inside of this needle and seat, and there was a small leak in that float as well. So I've taken the carburetor off, soaked it overnight in carburetor cleaner. Again, trying to get as much of that. Look at the deposits on that O-ring. Trying to get as much off of there as we can. Then with a flat blade screwdriver, you're going to pull your orifice off. It's going to dump your emulsion tube out. Note, this is the end that you are going to place back into the carburetor. More of that goo around, wiping it off, brushing it off as best that I can. Going to pull the idle adjustment screw off. If yours was running okay, take note of the position. Mine was not running okay, so I have zero confidence in that setting being good. It ran super rich. Then you can pull your pull your metering plug out, clean it really good. I blew mine out with compressed air. Now here is our rebuild kit. Here's our emulsion tube, correctly oriented or orientated. You put our orifice back in, tighten that down. This is the spring that goes on the end of the needle. It has to fit over the end like that. And then it has to slide into the little notch on the float. I couldn't do it with those stupid gloves on. Then you can place it back onto the carburetor housing. That needle is going to sit down in that seat. Then you can reinstall your float pin. Rebuild kit comes with new gaskets for the gas cup retainer bolt, as well as the gas cup drain plug. There was all kinds of deposits on there. I'm going to blame the ethanol again and bad old gas. I had to pry them off with a screwdriver. Carburetor cleaner and a wire brush, get that cleaned up real well. Reinsert your drain plug. I don't like that drain plug because it leaves a little bit of gas in the bottom of the cup, thus defeating the purpose of getting all that stuff out of there. Replace your gas cup O-ring. Take a sip of coffee. Note the orientation of that gas, that drain plug. You want it when you put the carburetor back on to actually be able to access it when it's back on your snowblower. Put the new metering pin back in. Then the idle adjustment screw goes over that, retains that there. Again, if you don't have a lot of confidence in the setting that it was when you pulled it off, count the number of screws from the time that sticks out on the other side of that bolt or of that little boss to the end, split it in half. That's a good starting spot. Put the carburetor back on, putting the air intake housing back on. I installed the breather tube onto the plastic housing and then put it back onto the valve cover. It's just easier to do it that way. There's one end of the prime line. And the two acorn nuts that'll hold your air intake housing on. Install the other end of your primer tube on. If you haven't, reinstall the electric start block. I took this chance, this opportunity to put on a fuel cutoff switch. If I have a long period of time in between snow events, I can turn this in the off position and then I can drain the fuel out of that cup. Then when it snows again, I can open that valve again and get a nice fresh shot of gasoline to come in there. Anything I can do to keep gas from sitting in that cup for an extended period of time. Gas stabilizer treatments, winterizing treatments, those will help. Fuel's off, fuel's on. You just connect it to the bottom of the gas tank, then to the bottom of the carburetor. You'll notice I cut a notch in my air intake housing here because I couldn't get a screwdriver in to adjust that. Let's put some fresh gasoline in there. Get it cranked up. Yeah, it runs good for a second. The shroud looks weird. That's just the rolling shutter on these cameras interacting with the vibrations. Take it off a choke. Sure does seem to be an awful lot of smoke, doesn't there? Clutch engage is okay. And then she stops. Guess what? That's right, we only fixed half of the problem. It seems kind of odd. Let's change the oil. Why are we changing the oil? Because that carburetor ran super rich. Way more gasoline than it needed. That gasoline went into the combustion chamber. Some of it burned. And then it just stopped running. I don't know if the hydraulic pressure got too high or what. But then the fluid that was in the combustion chamber drained back into the crankcase. So this is all gasoline coming out of the crankcase. The crankcase is only supposed to hold 20 ounces. Working on the second bucket now. Had to shoot some video, send it to a friend of the channel, Jay, who's been advising me on this and that on a number of projects. He's not just Mrs. RATTLECAN'S house, but RATTLECAN Guitar Restorations. He's been quite the beneficial friend to have. You may notice a decided lack of oil that has come out of this oil drain hole. I would guess that the lubricityness inside that crankcase wasn't amazing. And that is about the closest thing to oil that we got out of that entire thing. 5W30 going in. This may run a little bit better. We've removed all that fluid out of the crankcase and replaced it with actual oil. So this is after running for 5 minutes. I'd say that works. I've got a little bit of oil smoke coming out of the exhaust. We used a lot of carburetor cleaner to try to get the oil off the outside of that engine. That helped it quite a bit. She runs good. The auger runs good. If I include the can of carburetor cleaner, we're into this for less than $50. And snow's on the way, so we'll see how good it works. Thanks for hanging in there. Cheers.
If you enjoyed watching this episode of Mrs. RATTLECAN'S house, consider checking out this video. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, and to get the latest updates on our progress, like us on Facebook. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.
Perhaps we should have some wine.